Gotta get that out now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another discography review. Today I'll be talking about Trent Reznor, obviously the creator, founder, main musician in, if not the only musician in, a lot of the times, Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails is a band, and Trent Reznor is somebody who is very invested in all parts of the recording process, the albums, the artwork, and all that. So there's unbelievable amounts of information out there about all their releases and releases that were never actually out there in the physical world. So there's tons of research you can do on your own out there. I'm no expert by any means, but we're just going to talk about what I have in my collection and maybe some of those that might be currently missing in my collection for certain reasons. So we'll start off in 1989. He first recorded this album when he was working, I think, as a janitor or some kind of a sound assistant as well at a recording studio in Cleveland. And then he kind of started tinkering around and working on his own stuff. And then he ended up getting this deal to make his very first album, which is called Pretty Hate Machine. I have this reissue of it that came out, I think, in 2010. They finally reissued it, so he was under contract with TVT at the time. We'll talk about them a little bit. But so yeah, this came out in 1989, and this reissue is great. It sounds really, really good, and it includes a bonus track, which is a Queen song called Get Down, Make Love. It's a song I love by Queen, and his version of it is really great too. So the reissue comes with that. The original does not. There's a lot of fun stuff about this packaging. It comes with a slipcover, which is nice. Probably my favorite thing about this release in general was he was having a lot of issues with his record label, TVT. I want to say from pretty early on, as soon as he played this album for them, the head of TVT was this guy named Steve Gottlieb, I think is how you pronounce his last name. And so Trent Reznor plays Pretty Hate Machine for these label guys, and they hated it. I believe their exact words, they called it an abortion. So they were not fans, and he was pissed that he didn't feel supported by the label, and it kind of caused a lot of friction after that. So in the actual notes for this album, there's a section called "Thank You," and then he thanks a bunch of people. And then underneath that, there's something called "Fuck You," and it says Steve Gottlieb and TVT Records. So early on, already having problems. I think it's kind of amazing, honestly, that he's able to put that in the insert. Maybe it was just on this one. I don't know, because I don't think I actually ever at any point owned the first version of this. But it's really good. So it was recorded over X amount of time. I'm not really sure. He said it didn't take too long, but that some of it, including the biggest hit off of the album, came together very quickly. I think he had recorded most of the songs first. Down in It, Terrible Lie, I think one of those two were the first ones he actually recorded. I think it was Down in It, if I remember right. And then Head Like a Hole, which was a big hit, came towards the end of the recording process and the writing process. And he said it came together very quickly, and it's the most aggressive sounding song on the album. And I think there's no, it's not a coincidence, because he was having so many issues with this guy, Steve Gottlieb, and the TVT Records, that kind of was birthed, I guess, out of that friction. So this album is really great all the way through. There isn't a song on it I don't like, but if I had to pick some favorites, Head Like a Hole, which is wonderful. Something I Can Never Have. Sin, I love. Down in It's great. Terrible Lie is great. I guess I'm just talking about them all. But it's a really good album if you've never heard Nine Inch Nails, which I doubt that's the case if you're watching this video. This is a great place to start. Love this album. So that's 1989. He released a couple singles. One of them was Head Like a Hole. This has TVT all over it. You probably can't see it, but it's kind of everywhere on this release. So this caused more friction. This came out after the album came out. There are 10 tracks on this release. And so when this came out, because there are 10 songs on it, Trent Reznor thought he should be getting paid as if it were an album, because this release is actually longer than the whole album of Pretty Hate Machine. And in his contract, if I read it right, he should have received an album's worth of royalties, but TBT disagreed and gave him an EP worth of royalties, which was significantly less, and he was pissed about that. So he's mad. He's kind of touring this, and while he's doing that, he sort of secretly is working on something that's about to come up, but not this. He released another single, Sin, which I love. I have two versions of it. The only difference on these is this one is from England, and the sequencing is just different on these two albums. It's the same 4 songs on both. It's 2 dubbed versions of Sin and a sort of radio edit and Get Down, Make Love. So yeah, so he's pissed at TVT. He's pissed at this guy Steve. He kind of goes off on his own in a couple different places and starts recording his next album, which is very different from Pretty Hate Machine. It's very aggressive. It's amped up. The guitars are out, and it is loud and heavy and angry, and it's wonderful all the way through. And that's Broken in 1992. It's a very good album. Every song. It's short here, listed on the back. Pinion, Wish, Last, Help Me, I'm in Hell, Happiness and Slavery, Gave Up. Then there's 2 bonus tracks, Physical and Suck. So I like this packaging a lot as well. Kind of opens it up here. That's an N there on the front. And, oh. Yeah. It's fun little design. A couple things that I thought were funny in here to note. There's another diss at Steve here. Instead of thanks, he gets a no thanks credit. No thanks to You Know Who You Are. Oh, sorry, You Know Who You Fucking Are. That's to Steve and TBT, of course. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting in here was there's a caution note that says, not for use with mono devices. I thought that was kind of interesting because that's not really something that is talked about very often these days when that was coming out. And so I guess he was playing a lot with phasing, and because of that, they were specifically phasing certain elements to one or to like the left or the right channel. And so he said he remembers when he heard Happiness and Slavery on K-Rock back in the day, it was missing completely for most of the song on one of the drum tracks, and he was so mad about that. And that's because they were playing it through, I guess, a mono specific device, or maybe the radio that he was listening to was, I don't know, but I just thought that was funny. So there's a note about that. I don't know that many people, I mean, I guess some people have mono listening devices still, but it's not as common. So I can't imagine that's something that that really comes up very often. But Broken is a really, really good album all the way through. Again, kind of like Pretty Hate Machine. It's really good. And you can, that anger that sort of was driving him, I think, really helped that be a great record. In the same year, he released kind of like a remix or variations version of that, which is Fixed. Same year, 1992, came out. It's good. I'm not a big remix album fan in general. Nine Inch Nails has a lot of that, but this one's pretty good. It's definitely worth checking out. Fixed. It's a companion piece to Broken, Fixed. TVT Records still around, but the good news was all of this anger and frustration caused legal issues. Trent Reznor was trying to get out of that for a long time. Found a way to get out of it and settled the dispute, and basically TVT Records would continue to get a small amount of sales from Nine Inch Nails. I don't know how long that went for. I'd be curious if somebody knows actually. So they were getting a small amount of sales for a certain amount of time after that, and Interscope Records picked them up. Interscope gave Trent complete creative control, could do whatever he wanted, and also allowed him to start his own company. So he started Nothing Records, which was based in New Orleans. So he's angry, he's fired up, he doesn't know what to do, so he's gonna put all that into some music, and he puts out this sort of seminal Nine Inch Nails classic, The Downward Spiral. I have the deluxe edition, which came out on the 10th anniversary, so it came out in 2004, I believe. This album came out in 1994 originally. You know, it's sort of listed as bringing industrial music into the sort of popular music front, I guess. You know, a lot of people, there was a lot of industrial music going on before this, but it wasn't really popularized until, I suppose, if you want to say, this album came out. It's very good. It was recorded in a couple different places, but primarily he bought a mansion in the Hollywood Hills. I pointed this way because it's that direction to the Hollywood Hills for me. He recorded it in a mansion in the Hollywood Hills that he found out was, I think he says that he didn't know at the time, but he found out later that it was the Sharon Tate's house. So that place was called Le Pig. So if you see Le Pig credited in any of his earlier recordings, Le Pig Studios, that's where he recorded a lot of Downward Spiral. Not all of it, but a lot of it was there. Probably wrote most of it while he was there, though. So this is, again, a really, really good album. You know, his biggest probably commercial hit, Closer, is on this. I would say that's his most commercial hit. I could be wrong about that, but I think it is. That's definitely the one that got my attention when I was a kid. I didn't know about Broken or Pretty Hate Machine. I heard Closer and I loved it. It's got a great beat. I don't know, it's like very radio friendly in a weird way, even though the chorus is not radio friendly. This is a really good and, again, very aggressive album. I think if I had bought this in 1994, I probably wouldn't have loved it. But because I got into Nine Inch Nails a little bit later, I love it. I think it's really great. Mr. Self-Destruct is great. Piggy is excellent. Hearsay is probably my favorite song on the album. March of the Pigs, great. Closer. The Becoming is great. Eraser, great. Reptile, so good. I have a funny story about Reptile later. I guess it's a funny story. So 1994, boom, Downward Spiral. Now he's hitting it big. He's touring all over. He's doing Lollapalooza, I think, or maybe he did that right before this. But he's become like a huge success, in demand, writing and producing other things. And so one of the things he works on that same year is Natural Born Killer soundtrack. Got a little produced by, boom, right there, Trent Reznor. I am a fan of Oliver Stone. I'm not a fan of this, which will not make a friend of mine very happy, but that's okay. It's a great soundtrack. It's got a nice mix of stuff. He put the whole soundtrack together. I think he compiled a bunch of music that he thought would fit in it, but it's got like Leonard Cohen's on it. Who else is on this? There's a bunch of other people on this that I can't remember. Leonard Cohen, Nine Inch Nails obviously is on this. Somebody else. I can't remember right now, and it's not listed here, of course. But there's some great stuff on here. What's my favorite track? Oh, you know what? This track, The Future, this Leonard Cohen song that came on his album in the early '90s, The Future, is really good. It's a shortened version on this soundtrack compared to what's on Leonard Cohen's release, but it's a good soundtrack. The movie, not so much. The soundtrack, great. I feel like I'm missing somebody that's on that. Oh, you know who's on that? Dwayne Eddy is on that. Dwayne Eddy's great, and he was like a Coolidge, Arizona guy that was pretty great. So, the Nine Inch Nails song I should probably talk about. Sorry, it's called Burn. That's on this. Burn is a really good song, and if you buy the deluxe edition of this, it comes on disc 2, which is pretty great. Bob Dylan, I think, is on the Natural Born Killer soundtrack. Maybe that's who I was forgetting. I can't remember, though. I think that's right. So the same year, he he was a part of another soundtrack, didn't produce it, just put out one song. It's a cover of a Joy Division song called Dead Souls. I don't have it. There's a handful of my material that is currently isolating in a different location. So I'm very sad to not have it with me, but he was a part of the Crow soundtrack. Not sure if you can see that. Just kind of give you lots of that. Yeah, very good. It's a great soundtrack. A lot of good music on there. The Cure, also doing a song called Burn, not Nine Inch Nails Burn, different song. Stone Temple Pilots, Rage Against the Machine is on there. Jesus and Mary Chain. It's a really good soundtrack. And that song, Dead Souls, it's a good cover. Joy Division song is good, obviously, and Nine Inch Nails, very good. What else? 1995. So still working on that. I think this came out during the Self-Destruct tour, maybe part 2 of the Self-Destruct tour, but it's more Downward Spiral stuff called Further Down the Spiral. It's 10 songs again. It's another sort of remix, heavy song or different versions song. There's a couple live songs, one live song, and a bunch of like long remix versions of these songs. Some of the tracks on this, there you go, came out and were used heavily in Tony Scott's The Fan, which also came out this year. Nope, the year after this, 1996. And they were used again later on another Tony Scott soundtrack, which I'll talk about briefly. So that's 1995. 96, the second thing that I own that he was a part of that I don't have with me, he started producing on Nothing Records, his label, a couple different artists, one of which was very popular in the 90s, still today, I guess. The only one I own is Antichrist Superstar, Mr. Marilyn Manson. It's a pretty good album. It has the Beautiful People on it, which was, I guess, Marilyn Manson's biggest hit, I would say, back in the day. It's good. It makes a lot of sense that Trent Reznor would have produced that. I'm pretty sure they had a falling out at some point, and maybe they're friends now. I'm not sure. I didn't really get too much into that, but that's the only one I have, Antichrist Superstar. Not a huge Marilyn Manson fan. Maybe I should try more of it. So that's 96. 97, he worked on a couple things, one of which, he worked on a couple things, but the main thing he did, in my opinion, was The Perfect Drug. So this is an EP that he put out that has remix versions of it. It doesn't have the single version of The Perfect Drug, but it does have a bunch of different versions of it. In fact, I think it's called The Perfect Drug Versions. It is. And it's really good. I love The Perfect Drug. That's a great song, like that purple on the inside. I read that he did not like that song for a long time, and they never performed it live until I believe this last tour was the first time that they ever played it live. And I was lucky enough to see it performed live a couple times. Great song. And so he recorded that, wrote and recorded that for the next thing that is at work, unfortunately, which is another good soundtrack, The Lost Highway. Lost Highway is a David Lynch film. I'll show you a picture of it here. Another great soundtrack. A lot of really good artists on this as well. David Lynch's longtime composer Angelo Badalamenti did the score, but Trent Reznor did some score pieces on it as well, which are really good. The song "The Perfect Drug" is on there, which is really good. That Smashing Pumpkins song "I" is excellent. There's this great Lou Reed song, "This Magic Moment," that I love on that as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't know, but it's a really good soundtrack. So he's like getting involved in more soundtracks, as you see. Some people are using his music on soundtracks, the remix versions, which is kind of interesting. But a lot of that sort of comes up, I think, later. But yeah, it's good. Lost Highway, good. Next thing, also don't have at work. Very sad about this because it's cool. He worked with one of his heroes in the 90s, who he also toured with, David Bowie, and he worked on the song "Afraid of Americans." So there's a single version of it that is great that comes with 6 different versions. It comes with the album version, then the Nine Inch Nails remix version, a couple other versions that Trent worked on, as well as a version that Ice Cube is on, which is kind of fun. So the single is great. It has, like I said, 6 different versions of that song. So if you like that song, or if you like Bowie, or if you like Ice Cube, or if you like Trent, I would suggest listening to it, if not seeking it out. It's pretty easy to find. The music video, I remember, I believe, if I remember right, had Trent Reznor playing the character from the song Johnny, who I think is like hunting David Bowie in New York City or something like that. It's kind of interesting. That's worth checking out if you want. Wow. Another thing that I don't have with me that he did in 1998 is still with Nothing Records when he was producing stuff. He kind of came in last minute on this. I don't think his contribution is that big, but he worked on this album by his band called Two. This is Rob Halford from Judas Priest, and he worked with John Five, who's a guitarist with Marilyn Manson for a long time. Now is a long time Rob Zombie guitarist, who I love. So John Five and this guy, Rob Halford, put together this side project. Trent Reznor came in after they had recorded the first sessions. Basically, came in. Rob Halford talks about like Trent stripping it all down, rebuilding it all back up with electronics and all this kind of stuff. I guess his contribution was good enough for Rob Halford to talk about it very positively. He says that it changed the way that he looked at the album himself. So it was worth noting, I thought. So 1999. So things have gone downhill for Trent, right? He's now like heavily addicted to drugs and alcohol. He's having a hard time. He kind of holes up in his New Orleans studio, working on his next project, which is The Fragile. And the first single released from that was The Day the World Went Away. This is the single. This comes with that and Starfuckers Incorporated, The Day the World Went Away quiet version, which is my favorite version of that song, I would say. I read that they released this single first, knowing that it had no chance of getting airplay. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know if that's because it just went with his state of mind at the time or what, but I guess they knew going in this would not be a hit, this song, but the single is pretty great. Yeah, so the Day the World Went Away, great, first single. I also got that in a vinyl edition here with a nice Amoeba Records sticker still on it. $14.99 seems a bit steep to me, but apparently I didn't care at the time. It's good. It's really good. It sounds great on vinyl. This is the first piece of vinyl I have of his. I know he's a big fan of records, which I am as well, but he's definitely a bigger fan of it, and it's very good. So yeah, so like I said, this was the first single released off his next album, which was recorded in New Orleans, called The Fragile. So here is The Fragile, and it is a intensely long album. It's 2 discs, double disc. I love I love that he just kind of went for it. Maybe he just needed to do it at the time because he was in such a bad place personally, but it's really good. If you listen to this more, I feel like it gets better, because I definitely remember the first time I heard it, I was like, wow, that's good, but it's so long and there's so much going on that it was really hard to digest, I felt like. So I've really grown to like it over the years, and as with a few of his songs and albums in general, I would say his live performances have really brought out my liking in certain things that I maybe kind of had passed over the first time around. Like The Wretched is a song he almost always plays from this album that when I listen to it on the album, I'm like, that's good, not great. Every time I hear it live, it sort of reminds me of why it is such a great song. The neighbor's dog barking. One thing I totally forgot to talk about at the beginning, and I guess this is good enough time as any to talk about it, is all of his albums have this thing called Halo number. Did I put that the right side up? Yeah. So this one you'll see says Halo 14. I forgot to talk about this. So he loves Depeche Mode, among other bands, and he was inspired. They have a single, I think they label all their singles, what is it? Bong. And so all of their singles would come out and they would have something similar on the spines or on the discs or whatever. And it said like Bong 1 or whatever the first single was, Bong 2. And I guess he was inspired by that to do his Halo system. And also I think because he likes physical media so much, that it made it very easy to kind of keep track of what you had and find different variations. Most of his releases have Halo numbers. Some of them were promotional, so they don't, or there's like, a handful of things that didn't get a Halo number, but for the most part they do. So I've not been keeping track for you, but here we are at Halo 14 with The Fragile in 1999, double album again. It's very good. So other songs on here that I love, I'll be yelled at later if I don't say that Somewhat Damaged is a really great song. Somewhat Damaged is a really good song. The Wretched is great. We're in This Together, I really like, because it feels like one of the most radio-friendly songs, at least since Closer, which was the last album that he's ever done. Just Like You Imagined, Even Deeper, really great songs. Whereas Everybody is a song that I really love, and The Big Come Down is another song that I love. But it's really good all the way through. I feel like if you don't like it, it's worth listening to it a few more times to really kind of get into it. But Fragile, 99, again, he was in a bad place in New Orleans, and I think this kind of maybe was helping him get that out of the system in a weird way. So anyway, yeah, off that album, another single that was released was "We're in This Together Now." This was a German release. I think there's a couple different versions of this CD that come with a couple different bonus tracks. Bad lighting on this. This one here comes with "Complications of the Flesh," which is not on the release of The Fragile. Also comes with "Perfect Drug." And the other version, I think, comes with 10 Miles High and The New Flesh, I want to say. And those, I think, are other B-sides that were only released on this, but they kind of come up again later. But they were recorded during the Fragile sessions. So, yeah, it's very good. Oh, and I remember at the end of Starfuckers, there's like an ode to that Carly Simon song, "You're So Vain." He repeats a few times over and over again, he repeats some kind of a phrase that's close to "You're So Vain, you think the song's about you." I can't remember it exactly, bad memory, but it's something like that. So 1999. Moving on, 2000. A little companion piece is "Things Falling Apart." "Things Falling Apart" it's good. It's like different versions of it's not really a remix album. It's different versions of songs from The Fragile. There's a couple of things. Oh, 10 Miles High, which I was just talking about being a B-side. There's a version of it on this. There's also a cover of Gary Numan's "Metal," which is good, and a lot of people really like that. The first two tracks on this are kind of worth noting, "Slipping Away" and "The Great Collapse," because they're pieces that he definitely worked on himself. I think a lot of these other versions or remixes, whatever you want to call them, were kind of played around with by other musicians, but this one had a couple versions that were just him, which a lot of his work is. A lot of his work is just him doing, all of them. I think everything except drums a lot of times are what that he is kind of what he did. Unless the drums are electronic, then he would do it. And I think that he was a big David Bowie fan. He was a big fan of Prince, and I think that those kinds of influences really helped him want to do a lot of the music himself because he was able to. So in 2001, am I in 2001 now? Yes. 2001, just a quick thing that I thought was kind of worth noting for a lot of reasons. He works on this World Traveler soundtrack. So I had this soundtrack not knowing for a long time that he was a part of it because I am a big fan of the composer, Clint Mansell. So Clint Mansell was in a band called Pop Will Eat Itself. Pop Will Eat Itself was briefly signed to Nothing Records in the 90s. So they opened, I think, for Nine Inch Nails on a tour or a leg of a tour or something, or maybe a European tour. And so I think Clint and Trent became friends. And I know that in the late 90s, in the recording of The Fragile, Clint Mansell was like having a hard time working on Darren Aronofsky's first film, Pi, and composing the music to that, and was having a tough time kind of personally as well because he's friends with Trent. Trent says, "Come on down to my studio." So he comes down, and Clint has always talked about Trent basically taking him under his wing and kind of letting him do his own thing, but trying to give him advice in terms of music composition, I think, and doing a lot of that stuff on his own. So on this recording in particular that came out in 2001, Trent is actually credited as the piano player on the music from this. So it's a great soundtrack. I guess it's sort of a strange thing to have if you're a Trent Reznor completist. Not really necessary maybe, but he does play the piano on these tracks, which is good. And it has one of my favorite Willie Nelson songs on it, which is called "I Should Know, But I Don't, But I Love It." Oh no, where is it? "Your Memory Won't Die in My Grave." Great song. Love that song. I don't know if that's on any of his other releases, but it's really good. So that's 2001. Also worth noting in regards to that, it actually came out in 2000, but I got this remix version, or not a remix, but a remastered version of "Requiem for a Dream" soundtrack, which is by Clint Mansell, who we were just talking about. Clint Mansell also, I forgot, is in a couple, he's part of the choir that is on the Fragile record. So there's a couple songs that have a choir. What songs are they? "Pilgrimage," I want to say, and something else. And Clint Mansell's part of that choir of people. So Trent got a special thanks on this. This was just kind of during that time where I think Clint Mansell was hanging out down there. I love this soundtrack. If you like soundtrack music, if you like Nine Inch Nails and you've never heard this, I think you should check this out. It's available everywhere. Where should I put this? There. Okay, 2001. Also in 2001, another soundtrack, but also at work, very annoyingly, is the Tomb Raider soundtrack. He completed one song for it, Lara Croft Tomb Raider. Everybody remember this gem? It's a pretty good soundtrack. Who's on it? Oh no, forgetting again. But it's like, I think U2 is on there, Chemical Brothers, Trent, Nine Inch Nails is on there. They do this song called Deep, right? I think it's Deep. Do I have that written down anywhere? Deep. Yeah, it's a good song. Yeah, Deep. 2001. 2002, he's working on a live record. We've got this. It's very good. So here the Halo number is CD1. And then a companion piece released along with that is Halo 17 CD number 2, which is this record called Still. They sort of go hand in hand. I know that there was a couple different versions. I know there's a couple different ways you could buy this, but there was, I believe, a 3 CD like hardbound book that would give you this and this together. Maybe it would give you a DVD as well. I don't know, but I don't have that. So yeah. So this is kind of cool. Kind of a fun little packaging thing on the inside of this. No, it's not this. It's the DVD. I'll show you that in a second. But this is a good live album. Their stuff live is really good, and some of it's a lot different. Like Sin, you can hear from his earlier album, Pretty Hate Machine, on here, where it kind of sounds like it does live now. It's definitely worth checking out. So, boom. Still, the sort of companion piece to that is more stripped down, quieter versions of a lot of different stuff, mostly stuff from the Fragile. It's really good. He loves this album and these versions of the songs, and I do too. It's really good. It's also kind of a nice it kind of like makes sense with his soundtrack work coming up that he would break stuff down like that. I had the DVD as well. DVD is great, and it has this fun little thing on the inside that I liked. Got this like clear plastic that you can't read, obviously, that is hard enough for me to read, but it's sort of like the insert, if you will. It has a little note from him. He quotes one of his songs, The Wretched, and then he talks about how good this live concert is, how they recorded this tour, which was called Fragility? Yeah, Fragility 2.0 tour. You cannot see this. I wonder if I put this up if you could see it. No, it's too dark, but it's interesting. I don't know if this clear plastic thing came with all of the DVDs, but it's a fun little piece to have with that. And this was both in 2002, and All That Could Have Been, by the way, is the title of that live album and DVD. I realized I didn't say that. It's good. It's really worth checking out. I know a lot of people don't love live songs or live, albums, but it's definitely worth checking out. And I also forgot, I watched this recently, and I believe on the DVD there are Easter eggs. So if you want to look into that, you can. I can't remember how to do it, but there's like bonus songs and a couple different videos you can check out that way. 2002, same year, he isn't on this, but I just thought it was worth noting because it's great and it's really well known. He is featured on Johnny Cash's American For, The Man Who Comes Around. He's not featured, sorry. His song Hurt is featured, and I feel like this Johnny Cash version of Hurt is really well known. In fact, one of the last few shows of Nine Inch Nails that I saw, my friend and I overheard somebody say something about referencing Hurt and not realizing that it was Nine Inch Nails' song. Said, I didn't know he covers that Johnny Cash song. So I thought that was kind of funny. No hate towards that fan, though. You never know, This is a really good album. Hurt is on here. There's a great Nick Cave song on here as well. It's worth checking out if you like Johnny Cash. 2002. What are we at now? 2004. One more thing that I don't have, and I didn't actually know about this for a long time, but I thought it was kind of an interesting little side story. I'll tell you really quickly. So Perfect Circle, another band I like. This album, which was their third album, Emotive, it's a pretty good album. It's my least favorite of all four of their albums, I would say, but it has a song on there called Passive, and that song Passive had Trent Reznor's name as a written by. I never really looked into it until recently, like I said. And so apparently sometime around Downward Spiral, Trent Reznor, a couple of the other like live touring members of Nine Inch Nails, Maynard James Keenan, the lead singer of Tool and Perfect Circle, and a couple other sort of people. I think Josh Freese, a couple other people were all sort of involved with this side project band called Tapeworm. Tapeworm never really released anything. They were just all working on stuff for what seemed like 8 or 9 years. I think 2 tracks have ever really officially come out, not officially, sorry, but have been reworked to come out. This one, Passive, that's on Perfect Circle Emotive. And then there was some other Perfect Circle song that I believe came from a Tapeworm song. So that the band never, they're defunct and all that, but they had written a bunch of material apparently. And one of the other songs that kind of was out there was something that Maynard recorded that he had worked on with Trent. He recorded it for Trent on his wedding. So it was like a wedding gift that he gave to Trent Reznor as like a, hey, remember we worked on the song together, whatever. I just thought it was kind of an interesting little side story about that. So yeah, so now we're in the early 2000s and Trent Reznor has cleaned up his act. He's clean, he's sober, he's feeling good. He's feeling, I think, re-energized after that dark period and the Fragile. And it's a big turn, I feel like, going into the next record because it's more radio friendly, if you want to say. It's a little bit poppier, but it still has that like aggressive edge that you can see on Downward Spiral and Broken especially. So he's coming out with his new thing. So 2005, he puts out The Hand That Feeds, which is the first single from his next album. The singles also have the Halo numbers on them. I know I didn't really talk about them as much as I wanted to, but this one is, now we're at Halo 18. Halo 18, boom. And That Feeds is a very upbeat song. I remember when I heard it on the radio, I did not love it, but it has really grown on me over the years, and now I kind of love it. It's also very short, which is kind of nice. It's got a great catchy sing-along part at the end, especially if you see it in concert. It's like irresistible. I feel like the song is irresistibly likable. The Hand That Feeds, it's really good. So 2005, this was the first thing released on the upcoming album. But I also have, because you need it, boom, 7-inch. Very exciting. It sounds just as good on vinyl. This includes another song from the album Home. The song Home isn't on the US release. I think it was on one of the, either the European or the Japanese release of the CD. You can get that song Home. But it's here as a B-side, which is wonderful. Very good. And that leads us to With Teeth, 2005. It's really good. Again, this is when I first heard The Hand That Feeds, I wasn't optimistic, but picked up the album, and it's very easy to listen to, I think, all the way through, and it's actually really grown on me. A couple of his albums are like that. Like The Fragile took a little bit to get into. Not that I didn't like it at first. Same thing with Teeth. It was just kind of like different, I think, than what I was sort of expecting, and it's a really good album. So what's on here? He's Clean, as I said. All the Love in the World is great. You Know What You Are is one of my favorite songs of his. It's really good. The Hand That Feeds is good. Love Is Not Enough, I love. Only is great. And then the last 3 songs are pretty interesting. I feel like sort of, not thematically, but musically speaking, they kind of fit into the next couple albums. So the last 3 songs are The Line Begins to Blur, Beside You in Time, Right Where It Belongs. And all 3 of them thematically seem to go together, and the music connects in all the tracks. And they're really great, really worth checking out. It's possible I've seen those live, but no recollection of hearing any of those live. I'm sure I have, though. But as with a lot of his stuff, some of these songs that I have heard live are really, really good in concert. And this is a good album. It's never the first one I go to put on, but I do really enjoy it. And if I remember right, Dave Grohl recorded drums for like half this record, I think. Not the whole thing, but definitely part of it. He's sort of involved. So 2005. Another single from that, it's called Every Day Is Exactly the Same. and this is good. It's got a lot of good remixes on it. I have no idea if the single was big or not. I don't know. The singles off this feel all very successful to me. The Hand That Feeds, Every Day Is Exactly the Same, another song called Only that was released. They feel like they should have been hits if they weren't hits to me. Sort of note, the hip hop artist LP of Run the Jewels does a remix on this. He pops up a few times in the Nine Inch Nails discography. So 2005, we got that. And then the last single from that record, Only. Here's the vinyl version of it. I know it was released on CD as well. And on this as well, LP shows up. In fact, I think it's just him. Yeah, and Richard X. Richard X does a couple versions, and LP does a couple versions. And I love this song, Only. It's really fun, very upbeat, very dancey. And this is a good version of that as well. I just realized I think I skipped over CD. So I'm going to talk about it very briefly. So Tony Scott had used a bunch of Nine Inch Nails stuff off of Further Down the Spiral in The Fan. He did the same in Man on Fire. I haven't been able to find out enough about this, but it seems like Clint Mansell, who Trent had worked with, might have been hired to do the score for this originally. But as you can see down there, Harry Gregson Williams of the Hans Zimmer camp did the score in the end for this. But I was trying to read more about it. It looked like Clint was involved and Trent was kind of on board as well. He gets a special thanks in the film anyway, Trent Reznor. So I know that he must have been a part of it at some point. And so they use a lot of his remix versions from Further Down the Spiral as well. And they're integral in the film. Like if you watch it, there's scenes that are taking place that are actually using some songs from The Fragile, some songs from the remixes. It's kind of interesting. You know, they feel very interweaved with the story. So 2005 with T. 2006. Actually, this came out in 2006. I'm sorry. Every Day Is Exactly the Same. Single came out the year after that, which is good. And that same year, he also has a remix version of his song show up on the Doom soundtrack. Very exciting for everybody, for me to keep talking about soundtracks. Clint Mansell, again, popping up, another name. He did the score for the whole thing, but Trent Reznor had a song off with Teeth, You Know What You Are, Who You Are, You Know What You Are, that I love. And it's a remix version that Clint Mansell did of that song on the Doom soundtrack, which is good. So then 2007, we're getting into something that I love, my favorite album of his, but the first single off of the next album is called Survivalism. Survivalism was the single off of his upcoming Year Zero album, which is a concept album that takes place in 2022. 2022 is considered Year Zero. And it's all about like, there you go, this symbol here, the gun into the cross, because this album was all about how like the government had basically taken over by force, church and state no longer separate, and civil liberties have gone out the window in this crazy world that isn't so hard to believe nowadays. This is a really great concept album. I remember reading him say something about how it's not all going to work. It's definitely too long, probably, but you know, it is what it is, and it needed to be out there. I love it. I know that a lot of people think it's too long, but Year Zero, which came out in 2007, is really wonderful. And for some reason, I liked it right off the bat. I feel like a lot of people, it's taken them more listens to get into it, but I don't know, it's really good. So again, we got the church over here with the Bible, there, gun. So I can't even begin to talk about the complexities of the campaign that went into this, as well as everything that's still going on in regards to this. But the concept part of this concept album was so intense that I'll just briefly talk about it, but you can read a ton about it. There's a whole Year Zero timeline that I think starts in the year 2007 when this came out, all the way up to Year Zero, which is 2022. I mean, there's like fake characters connected to the songs. There's hidden messages that were hidden. The whole way that this was announced was there was a tour T-shirt, and somebody noticed on the tour T-shirt that certain words were highlighted. Those certain words were figured out to be a website, they go to the website, and then that gave them weird information about another website. It unlocked all these other puzzles. At some concert in Spain, supposedly, somebody found a USB drive in a bathroom stall, and that USB drive had one of the songs from this on it. And then somebody analyzed the song on the USB drive, and there were multiple concerts where USB drives were found, and things like this happened that kept taking people in different sort of wormholes. But somebody analyzed supposedly the audio file on the USB file and realized it made a picture, and that picture was this. It was like a weird version of this like hand thing you see coming out there, which they call the presence, which may or may not be true depending on who you talk to in the world of Year Zero, because there are fake drugs in this world, and these psychedelic drugs, like some people on these drugs make you see this presence. Sometimes you don't see it. It's unbelievably detailed, this whole thing, and I love this album, even not going into all of that detail that I still can't unravel. But it's worth reading about because it kind of shows how much he cares about this stuff, or he puts in a lot of times what he talks about being overthought into the process of packaging and all that kind of stuff. But this album for me is a winner all the way through. This right here symbol is the symbol of the resistance group in this world. But I like every single song on this album. I don't know that you're gonna be able to see this, but all of them are good. Please buy this album and listen to it and talk about it in the comments. Year Zero is great, not for everybody. The other thing kind of worth noting about this year, 2007, or that tour rather, I think it was actually part 2 of that tour. That's the first time I ever saw them live. A friend of mine, Brian, took me to the show. It was a great experience. We saw, I remember it being very aggressive sounding at the time, more aggressive than I thought it would be. And there was this performance of Reptile, I think. I feel like I always get this wrong, but I think it was Reptile from Downward Spiral, where this light show was killing my eyes. I felt like I was having like the performance was not for people who are epileptic. Let's just say it was a tough thing to get through, but I loved it, and I really have never gone back since. That's kind of where my fandom really began to get pretty intense. So not that it's intense, but yeah, it's really good. Oh, and I did want to read one thing about Year Zero. This is what Trent had to say about it. The record is so much more than a sound collage than recent efforts. A lot of it was improvised. It's very tedious describing your own music. It's not just music. It's probably too long, but it felt like the right thing to do. It will sound different after a few listens. You can think about it and it will reveal more than you were expecting. You can dance a lot to it. You can fuck a lot to it, maybe all depending on what you're into. And I think he's right. He summed it up very nicely there, because I think part of the reason I liked that album so much, at least right off the bat, was that it felt like you could just like get down to it. You could dance, you could do whatever. It's like a really groovy album in a strange way, and a lot different than all of their albums previous, I think, in a very good way. So yeah, so 2007, Year Zero, boom, Sean is in. I'm a big fan. He put out the same year this remix album of all the tracks from Year Zero, and working with like Saul Williams, a bunch of other sort of noted DJs and whatnot. But it's kind of funny because my favorite song on here is My Violent Heart, which is by Pirate Robot Midget. And that was a fan mix, I found out after listening to it. So he had a lot of his stuff in this era put up on the site for free, where you could pull down every single file, every single track in each track, and you could do your own remixes of the albums, and he would even encourage people to do that and then upload them to the website and check them out. And when this remix came out, he actually loved this one so much that he put it on the actual physical release, which is cool. Cool to be a fan and get that. 2008, we're now in. Ghosts. Not everybody's favorite album, but I'm actually a very big fan of this. I am really into soundtrack music anyway, scores, and so I think it made sense that I would like this. But I love this. I think it's excellent. it's very much a mood, right? It's very much something that I feel like people would have on in the background. And I think when this came out, he encouraged people to make music videos to some of the tracks, um, little short movies, that kind of stuff. There might have been a contest involved. I don't exactly remember, but it's really good. It's all instrumentals. It makes complete sense when getting into his soundtrack work, where the soundtrack work sort of came from or stemmed from. This is a really good album, and I think it rewards people who listen to it a lot. I think it'll grow on you if you don't like it. Check it out again. He also, I was talking about LP a lot earlier. He shows up on one of LP's solo records as well. This one called "I'll Sleep When You're Dead," which is really good. And I think Fat Possum, in fact, just recently reissued it. It's really good. He's on the song called Flyntology. Flyntology shows up in that episode of Breaking Bad called The Fly, or Fly, might just be Fly, that a lot of people hate because it's a very strange episode of Breaking Bad. But this song Flyntology is really good, and he's on there vocally. He produced a couple of the other songs on that album as well, worth noting. So still in the same year, we're moving on to, so Ghost came out, right? All instrumental. And then as a different sort of project for himself, he wanted to do something different. He decided to record something in 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, The Slip came out. So now we're up to Halo 27, everybody. Very exciting, Halo 27. The Slip, that great little artwork. The Slip was limited physical release of 250,000. This is 231,747. That's the one I've got. Very exciting. I wish I had number one, but I don't. So yeah, so it comes with a video disc as well. The video disc might have visuals to each of the songs. I don't remember. It's been a while since I watched it, but I know it has some live rehearsal songs, maybe 5 from the album that are really good. The Slip is good. I feel like this might have been my least favorite album for a while, but after re-listening to it a couple years ago before I was going to go see him in concert again, it really grew on me. There's some really good stuff on here. This song Discipline, I love. Very upbeat, and it's very likable. There's something interesting about this book, I thought. I mean, that's cool design anyway, but it came with these stickers. And apparently each physical release came with 3 stickers that relate to a song. So like if you go in here to the lyrics to one of the songs, it's got this symbol. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but the song in here, Letting Go, has this symbol, which, if you'll remember, is the symbol from Year Zero, The Resistance. So some people have speculated that maybe it's connected, but nobody's been able to, it doesn't seem like people are able to figure it out. It's just like, it's in here. The lyrics don't seem to pertain to anything related to Year Zero or the art Resistance or whatever they're called from Year Zero, but it's interesting. Again, I feel like if you're a fan of Nine Inch Nails, there's so much information out there. You'll never be able to figure it all out. And I think that's part of the fun for him. I feel like he's like, well, I'd rather put in all this thought and people can make connections to other pieces and whatever. And that's like part of the fun of being a fan. Excuse me, of being a fan. So yeah, the weird Year Zero connection, The Slip. Who knows if it actually is? The Slip is really good though. I recommend checking it out. What else? That's 2009, 2010. 2010, we move into his first soundtrack, Social Network. Social Network is very good, and the score is great, and it won him an Oscar. Him and Atticus Ross. Atticus Ross had been in this band called 12 Rounds that was on Trent's label in the 90s. So I'm assuming that's where they got to know each other. And then he started working with the band, not as an official member, but as somebody who would program certain tracks and do some of the recording himself with Teeth. So in 2005, which was 5 years before this, Atticus Ross sort of started becoming a much more influential member, I suppose, of the Nine Inch Nails group. So this soundtrack came out. The movie was a success. The soundtrack was a success. He won an Oscar for it. They won an Oscar for it. It's worth checking out. And I feel like if you're gonna buy one of his soundtracks, that's probably the one to buy because I feel like you'll recognize some of the stuff off it. It's good. It's worth checking out for sure. I do like it. The year after that, he followed up with another soundtrack, which I'm pissed that is at work as well. I was shocked that it was there. But he did the soundtrack for same director, David Fincher, who he had worked with on music videos in the 90s, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is very expansive. It's 3 CDs, if I remember right, full of music. There is a great cover that they worked on with Karen O of the Immigrant Song, which is very good. There was also a How to Destroy Angels song on there, but not one of their songs. It's a cover of a Brian Ferry song, which is also good. Yeah, it's a good soundtrack. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It's very long. I feel like Social Network is probably an abbreviated version of the soundtrack work that you could get into if you're just trying to get into it. And I think Girl with the Dragon Tattoo didn't win an Oscar. I don't even know if it was nominated, but I think it won a Grammy, if I remember right. So that's good. So that's 2011. 2013, right? Yeah. This is, we get into another recording here. Hesitation Marks. Hesitation Marks, I think, is probably the I don't know, feels like the one thing that's like really outside of everything else Nine Inch Nails has done, which is interesting because it's definitely connected to the Downward Spiral. I don't know if you can really tell, but so the artist on this, I believe his name is Russell Mills, and so he worked on all of the art for the Downward Spiral, including all the singles like March of the Pigs, everything else that was released physically further down the spiral. All that stuff is artwork that this guy Russell Mills did, and so they brought him back for Hesitation Marks. I think if I remember right, Trent was saying he had been like thinking a lot about Downward Spiral. Maybe it was an anniversary coming up, maybe 20 years. Yeah, 20 years was coming up on Downward Spiral, and maybe when he was writing it, the 20 years of that. And so it was on his mind a lot, which then brought up Hesitation Marks, which is interesting because I don't think it could sound more different than that record to me, sound-wise. This is the deluxe edition, which came with an extra disc of remixes. It's good. It's like when I'm listening to this, I feel like this is something that like parents could listen to. I don't want to make that seem like it's tame, but it does feel like kind of tame and a little bit more house music from the 90s or something. It's a really interesting thing. This song Copy-Ova is so good. Came Back Haunted is great. Find My Way is really good. Satellite I Love. It's a really good. It's not called Satellite I Love. It's just called Satellite. I love that song. It's good. I was surprised how much I liked this, and I feel like I saw them a few times on tour during that time, which I think is when Atticus Ross started playing live with them as well, if I remember right. So 2013 brings Hesitation Marks out, and it also brings out something else interesting that is at work, which is him working with his wife and Atticus Ross on the side project. They had a couple EPs come out, but the full-length album I have called Welcome Oblivion by the band How to Destroy Angels. I know that looks staticky, and that's because it's supposed to. How to Destroy Angels, I never really got into. I mean, I listened to that a few times, and I thought it was pretty good. And as with many of his songs and a lot of his stuff, I guess, seeing it live helped. On the last tour, he and his wife came out as a guest star a few of the times, and the stuff sounds really good live. It kind of took on a different meaning for me, so I listened to it a couple more times after that, and I like it a lot now. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. 2014, another soundtrack, Gone Girl. David Fincher again. 2 discs of music, a lot of music. This one's really good as well. I think I read somewhere that he loves this one. Maybe he or Atticus think this is their best work, or maybe their favorite work. I don't know. Maybe both of them. It's good. It's worth checking out. Again, the movie is really good. I don't like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the movie, but I do like Social Network and Gone Girl. I'll say that. It's worth checking out. This is 2014. And nothing in 2015. Very exciting. 2016, we get into the first of a trilogy of EPs is how they first labeled them, but then he started calling them albums because he felt like, I think it was the way, if you put an EP on Spotify, it goes to like the EP section. If you put something labeled an album, it goes to an album, has a more expansive, I think, audience. So I think he ended up calling them albums at the end, but he thought these three pieces of the trilogy would make a full album. So the first one comes out, and it's called Not the Actual Events. I mean, the connections are everywhere, right? In this guy's work, you'll see, if you remember or if you know already, but this is Not the Actual Events, 2016. And then if you go back to All That Could Have Been, that live record, similar fonts being used there, as you'll see, and the exact same setup as Still. I know that's kind of hard to see there, but it's basically the same kind of setup. So connections everywhere. So this came out. It's great. Dave Grohl shows up again. I know he drums on one song, The Idea of You. This is a really good record. Branches, Bones, so good. Dear World, She's Gone Away, I love. And it's really good. The other thing that's kind of interesting about these, starting with the soundtracks, really, and moving into this stuff, I don't know why he has another, Nothing Records is no longer around, but now he makes something called the Null Corporation. Null Corporation was something that started with Social Network. So Social Network actually has Null #1, I think, on the spine, and it was just another, thing that he sort of put together, another label and another way to classify some of his music. So these are both Halo and Null numbers, which is very strange to me, I think. I think that's right. No, Null Corporation produced this. It's only a Halo number. So yeah, so this is really good. And I think that part of the reason why he wanted to break this and the next two of the trilogy up was because he felt like the way people were listening to music now, it made more sense, right? Like if he released an album of 20 tracks, people would lose interest really quickly. So releasing them, I think he released them 6 months apart. He thought that there would be, a little bit more interest or build some kind of enthusiasm for this project. All of them came with, well, two of them came with a physical element. So aside from the CD, when this came out, before I got the actual CD, I got the digital files and this ridiculous thing that I don't have because it's so messy. It came in this like black envelope that was probably this big. And it had a sticker on the back. It just said, to me, you open the box, it's this weird black envelope that has the sticker that says warning, like, Null Corporation, his company, is not responsible for any damage or any whatever. All this like this warning thing. I was like, okay, whatever, dude. I didn't think anything of it. I start to open this package, and you open it, and there's like these sort of glossy. They look like laminate material that have images of him and Atticus Ross on it, as well as lyrics. But on top of all of that, when you open it, there's this like black powder. This black powder, I opened this at my desk, it went everywhere. It was kind of like charcoal, and it was not easy to clean off. I was so happy that nobody was there watching me open this, because I opened it and it went everywhere. And I was like, oh no, this is not good. And I thought it would be easy to clean off, but no, it was like a charcoal or some kind of like material like that, and it took a long time to clean it off. But I thought it was really funny. But I think I put that in the garage because I'm just like, what am I going to do with that? It's still messy. So I should have put it back in the bag. Didn't think about that. But it was kind of an interesting thing. So it came with this, which, I wish I had to show you, I guess, but I don't. So that's part one in 2016. And then in 2017, we take a quick detour from the trilogy, and he releases, sorry, gotta get it here. So this is Fragile Deviations, and this is all instrumental tracks of the Fragile, but it includes like B-sides, and it was, in some newer recordings, I think, of things. But it's a really great recording. The artwork is all very much like the Fragile. This is great. It's a long listen, like the Fragile is, but if you like instrumental work, you like his soundtrack work, I highly recommend picking this up. Um, I love it. I listen to it a lot. Fragile, Deviations. And then that same year, he released a couple different soundtracks. So Before the Flood was something he worked on with a bunch of different people. Gustavo Santiola is on it. Mogwai is on it. But it's him and Atticus Ross again. Here's what the soundtrack looks like. So it was released digitally and in a vinyl, which I don't have, but I came across a promo CD, 2-disc CD of it that I was so excited one day to be able to show on this discography review, and it's at work. And I'm so mad about that. But it's great. It's again 2 discs, so it's a lot of stuff. But they recorded a song called "A Minute to Breathe" that is on there with vocals. So it's worth checking out if you're a fan of his and you want to hear new music he's recorded. A Minute to Breathe is an interesting piece of music. I like it. So Before the Flood is a good soundtrack. It's not great. I feel like a lot of his soundtrack stuff it has a similar feel. They're all a little different, but it could, like, if you put out a box set of all his soundtrack music and you just played track 1 to track whatever, you would get the idea, that it's one long song, which I like. That same year, he worked on a short film for NASA. He just did, I think it was just one piece of music for the short. This song called Juno. That's the album artwork. And it's good. Again, it was a digital only thing. There was no physical piece put out of that. You can download that track on iTunes, maybe from their site if you want as well. It's good. It's like 10 minutes long, I want to say, the piece, but it's good. Nothing to write home about, but I do really like it. So 2017, we get into the second of those EPs or albums, and this is Add Violence. I remember reading something again about his obsession with packaging and notes and all that stuff, and I remember him releasing something about the back image, saying, "Remember when there were back images to albums, something like that, and they meant something?" He's like, maybe this one means something. And then people started to really analyze what was going on back here. You could do that with all their albums all day long and connect them all, and whatever. It's really intense. But with that came another physical component. This. Quick reference guide. There's the Null Corporation showing up there. I mean, just insane stuff. Like on some of this stuff, like on the Year Zero album, there was a phone number on the back. That's what's funny about this stuff. Like I feel like even if you come to the game late, there's a wealth of knowledge you can kind of get from that. So in it came all these little plaques, these little sort of, they're like plastic little pieces. Spare replacement labels is what they're called. Let's see that in here. There's just tons of stuff like this, I love this kind of stuff because, I love physical media. So opening this stuff and it's part of the fun of it, right? And then listening to it while you're looking at all this stuff. I love that kind of stuff. But I get that it's not for everybody. And that's kind of what's nice about Nine Inch Nails. One of the nice things, it's if you want to really get into this stuff, you really can. There is so much of it. But if you don't and you just want to listen to music, that's also great because it's wonderful. So, Add Violence, second part of that EP trilogy. It's very good. I think this is the one with let's see, what songs are on this? Less Than is great. The Lovers is really good. The Lovers was in Twin Peaks. Did we have a visitor in that shot? I don't know. Will's laughing, so
He's laughing at you.
Maybe he's laughing at me. I don't know. All right, Add Violence, 2017. What am I talking about? Oh yeah, so the song on here, This Isn't the Place. I remember we were at a show a few years back, and he mentioned that song was inspired by David Bowie. He loved Bowie. He had a friendship with them, and they worked together a lot. They collaborated some, but they toured together in the 90s. So that song is on here. It's really good. I think it's the last song on this. Yeah, this last song on this I really like. It's 12 minutes long, The Background World. But it's got this cool thing where when the song gets toward the end, it sounds like when a record is just spinning out in the final groove, you know? And so that song, that like kind of noise with the music that's going on at the same time just kind of repeats for a while. And I really like it. I find it sort of hypnotic. I can listen to it all day long. But this is a really good album. I like these EPs a lot. Add Violence is excellent. I don't know if I had anything else to add about that, but it's very good. So 2017, I think we still are in. He did a couple, we did one digital only release of a soundtrack. That's very good. I never saw the movie though. Patriots Day. It's opening on the iPad. Hold please. There we go. Never saw it. Soundtrack's good. Patriots Day. You know, again, him and Atticus Ross doing their thing. I think that he wants to release that on vinyl, but it hasn't been yet, so worth checking out. And then that same year, another soundtrack for the Vietnam War. There's a couple of different versions of this. I know that they released the score on vinyl. They released it on CD as well, which is what I have. There was also a regular soundtrack released with, I think, if I remember right, like Vietnam era kind of songs and songs that were probably used in the film, the documentary. I did not see the documentary. That's bad. I should have, but the score is really good. I like this one a lot. This is a great place to start. Also, if you're getting into his music, I probably would recommend this and The Social Network if you're looking to get into his soundtrack work. I like them both a lot. I think that's right. 2018. What do I have? Yeah. So 2018 is the third of the trilogy of EP/albums. Bad Witch. This is my favorite one by far. I love this one. It's interesting because I'm just noticing it has that 5-box symbol. Wasn't that on the slip? Right? Am I going crazy? Now I have to look. I'm sorry. Wasn't that one of the stickers I had? I got it. Hang on. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Is that a coincidence? I hadn't thought about that, but that's kind of funny. Maybe somebody will tell me. Bad Witch is really good. I think it's the best of these three, as an album goes, right? As like its own piece. I love this one all the way. He breaks out the saxophone on this album, which is great. All the songs on here are really good. Shit Mirror, Ahead of Ourselves, Play the Goddamn Part, God Breaks Down the Door, I'm Not From This World, Over and Out. They're all really good. As I said, he plays the saxophone on this a little bit. So this came out after he announced that they were doing some tours. And I never remember the name of his tours, but basically was doing 4 nights at the Palladium in Hollywood. And to get a ticket, you had to go in person to get that ticket. So I had never thought about this, but a lot of fans say that the physical element that came with this album was the waiting in line to get tickets at that tour. So any of that, he toured like DC, you know, a bunch of big cities in the States, but it was a small tour, maybe like 12 cities or something like that. And so for every one of those shows, you had to go in person to get the ticket. And so that's what people say, which I love. That is the physical element that came with this, is that you had to go in line and get this. So when I was there in line, I got, like, with a pre-order of it from a local record store, they basically gave you one of these, which was so fun, you know. And so with this, I'd like to phone a friend really fast. So yeah, that brings us to me wanting to, I'm just call my friend really fast, phone a friend. Hang on a second. Brian, you there?
Hello.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Sean?
Tell us where you're talking to me from. I'm here in Los Angeles. Where are you talking?
I'm in Loveland, Colorado.
Okay, it's good to hear your voice. Good to see you. A nice shirt.
Good to see you too. Yeah.
So yeah, I was just talking about lining up the physical element. Had you heard that Bad Witch, the physical element that came with it was the concert ticket experience? Had you heard
I
that?
had never heard that, but it makes sense because
Yeah.
I never even thought how no physical element really came with that third LP or EP. So I know, yeah, but you're probably right.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't me that put that together because I also had not thought about that, but I thought it made complete sense, like for
Yeah.
what he, was always trying to do and the experience he's always trying to bring with his music and his live shows. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about the experience of waiting in line and what ended up being 6 nights. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's such an amazing day because we, of course, met early in the morning. I had a feeling it was going to be more crowded than you thought it was. I wanted to get there way early, and you said it's not going to be that bad. And so I know we go and have brunch at, was it Denny's? Or no, was it no, Norm's, right? Or Norm's?
Norms.
Yeah. And then we go get in line. And I just remember we were driving towards the Palladium, and we just saw people. I think you said, fuck. Like, you just saw all these lines just going around the whole block, and you just knew, oh my God. But we ended up being fine because there's so many available seats or tickets, but
Yeah. I mean, we were both, I remember being really nervous because we felt, they specifically said on the website there will be no lining up before like 8 a.m. right? And part of the reason you wanted to get there early is you were like, there's no way that is true. I thought, well, they're saying it on the website, so it felt true to me. It felt on their official website. I thought, well, hopefully they're gonna. But that was very naive of me to think because by the time we showed up, the line was way too long. We were very nervous. We weren't going to get tickets to all 4 shows.
Yeah, then it was such a great day. I had a time. I needed to be back to Orange County for a big party that evening. It was just great. It was just perfect timing, the whole thing. And we had a wonderful time in line. Met some beautiful people.
Yeah, we met a lot of great people that we ended up seeing at the shows. Again, and so at the time when they announced it, it was just the 4 shows at the Palladium.
Yeah.
But then soon after that, they announced 2 more shows at the Palladium. It's possible that we had an idea that was going to happen because they were the way that the dates were stretched out. We thought, well, there's room for them to add them, but we may have also had a little inside line, little knowledge into that, right? Was there somebody that we possibly knew kind of worked at a label?
Yeah, we just bought 4 tickets that day, right?
We did. We bought all 4. Yeah. When I remember when the next 2 went on sale, I was traveling for work. And so I was out of the country, and you were going to try to get tickets for us for both the additional 2 nights they ended up adding.
Yeah, and I had no luck at all. And I know another friend of mine had the same issue. We couldn't buy crap. And where you were, you're
It was insane. I remember that being such a cool experience because you would purchase successfully the additional Saturday night, but the Friday you couldn't get, your friend couldn't get. I logged on immediately at the same time. It was late, really late for me. It was in London. And I got a ticket, no problem for us. So I was very excited about that. I remember that also sort of adding to the physical element, if you will, of the Bad Witch release, which the whole thing made an experience. And obviously we have a mutual friend, Will, who was going to make a little film about all of these nights, and that sort of added to the excitement of it as well for us, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what night I enjoyed the best, but I mean that Wednesday night where Will was there was just glorious, just magical.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool experience, and those were definitely my favorite shows that we went to. We took our wives to a show. We had a various group of people who joined us at different shows, and
I think the difference between the first 2 nights there were maybe 5 of the same songs.
Yeah,
like there's just such a variety of music played between those first 2 nights. The later shows it got kind of not don't want to say obvious, but there was less surprise in those later shows. But it was awesome.
Yeah. I just quickly want to just while we're on the phone here talk about a couple things with these shows. One, if you are interested in watching a short documentary about my friend Brian and I attending all these shows, including I think it starts with the line portion. I don't remember. Though that's the ticket that we got, right?
Yeah.
Cold, Black, and Infinite?
Cold, Black, and Infinite is the name of the tour, and I think the tickets they rested on the top of this, so.
I just want to say here, you can go to this site if you want to watch the film, Vimeo. You go to vimeo.com /345 119704. You can go ahead and watch this little short documentary film that our friend Will made about Brian and I going to all 6 of these shows. I think it's great. I mean, honestly, maybe I'm biased because we're in it, and it's silly, but it's kind of a cool look at, I don't know, fandom in general, but also, what this tour sort of encompassed, and the physical element. I feel like, honestly, Nine Inch Nails should watch it and be like, oh, this is great because this is exactly the physical presence we were looking for, right? For Bad Witch.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
We're easily recognizable because we wear flight suits to these shows. So that's what we wear. They're very old and disgusting. And there's a Nine Inch Nails patch right down here. You'll see that. Brian, really fast before I let you go back to your wife and your son, do you have any additional things you would like to add? And can you maybe tell me a couple of your favorite albums by Nine Inch Nails?
Well, I don't know, because the timing of when I got into Nine Inch Nails, I don't know, because I grew up here in Colorado before moving to California in '93, and right about that time I moved. My 2 friends here named Shane and Vinayak, they are into Nine Inch Nails. I was not. I didn't dislike them, but I didn't really care. And then of course I moved to Colorado and was the typical lonely teenager. Like, I think that strives for listening to Nine Inch Nails and is empowered by their message and the energy of the music is just awesome. But I just think, Closer Than came out the next summer, whenever that album came out, Downward Spiral. And Closer got popular. What's that?
1994.
Yeah, Closer got popular on MTV, and then also I became a big fan of The Crow, which had the cover, Joy Division cover, and then Natural Born Killers. So all at the same time, my movies and of course the Downward Spiral album got very popular at the same time, and I was looking for some music to really just scream to, and it was just perfect timing. That's what got into the Nationals through Downward Spiral, and then I went back and listened to the earlier stuff and fell in love with that as well. And just over and over, I got so excited by each upcoming release after that. And then, of course, with you, we started going to shows, and I think 2008 was our first show, I'm pretty sure. And it's just a whole merry-go-round after that.
Was it this show? Was it that? No, that wasn't this show at the Palladium.
That pin's familiar. What did that pin say on it?
You gave it to me. It's the Nine Inch Nails at the Palladium. This was the second show we saw.
I believe so. Yeah.
This is the one where they played Downward Spiral from start to finish.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Yeah. I think you're right.
Cool.
But yeah, Coachella in 2005 was when I saw Nine Inch Nails live the first time. That was just awesome. I mean, just incredible. I lost my shoes. It was just so. I mean, the big mosh pit up front on the field, just so crowded. I couldn't breathe and couldn't move. I had to basically sneak out of my shoes to escape out of there because I lost my friend I was there with. He could handle the commotion, so he went way to the side before the Nine Inch Nails really started their set. It was an awesome evening. So
I think a mutual friend of ours was at that show too. Josh,
yeah.
I think he's there. I can't remember right, but I think he was there.
I think you're right. Yeah, I believe you're right.
I don't think he really cares that much about the band, but I believe he checked out some of it, if not the whole set.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Any final thoughts? Any other things you want to give us before I hang up with you and let you get back to your life?
No, just got to say, ignore it.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for joining us today.
All right, love you.
Right,
Thank
love
you.
you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. That was Brian, everybody. We're going to take a pause. Nice. That was nice having my friend Brian there from Colorado join us. Last little bit of thing about that. Here's a physical copy of the great little documentary a friend Will made about us. Again, that Vimeo site, vimeo.com/345-119704. If you want to check it out, please do. It's very good. At that concert, during one of those, two of those nights, one of the crew guys gave us some Nine Inch Nails guitar picks, which was pretty cool. All right, so that's 2018, Bad Witch. We've gone over it, physical component, all that. That same year, 2018, he and Atticus Ross did the cover of John Carpenter's classic Halloween theme. It's like 8 minutes long. It's really good. I mean, I love John Carpenter, so I was very excited to see this. This is actually the second pressing of this. The first pressing that they sent out, I think had the wrong version of the song. It was like the wrong mix of the song. And so they ended up resending out the vinyl. I have the resent vinyl. This is really good. You can download the file online as well. But for me, Carpenter and Trent Reznor fan, can't beat that. He also did another soundtrack in 2019, which was only released digitally. That was for Jonah Hill's directorial debut, mid-90s, which if you haven't seen, I got to tell you, I wasn't excited to see it, but it was really good. So he and Atticus did the score for mid-90s. It's a good score. The movie is really good. 2019, on tour for Bad Witch, I believe. That Bad Witch, the 3 EPs tour, basically, he and Atticus were composing music and musical ideas in their hotel rooms together. And what ended up becoming Bird Box. So Bird Box, the score to that Netflix film with Sandra Bullock, was only released digitally first, and then did this really intense vinyl packaging of it that comes with so many records, so much music. It's anything you would ever want. It's really good. The packaging is beautiful. I'm not going to show all of it because it'd be too much, but each record comes in one of these like interestingly like sort of black painted almost compartments. It's very cool, and there's tons of that in here. It's very cool. So, but that also gives us an opportunity for a giveaway. On the back of this is a digital code for the entire expanded Bird Box, which if you buy the vinyl, you get. If you didn't buy the vinyl, you get the abbreviated digital version. Well, I've got the full thing right here. If the first person that comments gives me their top 5 favorite Nine Inch Nails albums, you will get this code. The first person to give me the top 5 favorite albums gets the Bird Box code, and we'll figure out a way to get that to you. So, boom, giveaway. Bird Box is very good. I mean, as a collector of physical, product, this is the first time I was able to get one of the deluxe sort of editions. They've released deluxe editions for Ghosts and some of his other stuff that I unfortunately missed out on. So I was happy to get that. That's 2019. He also did the soundtrack to Waves, also just digital. It's a really good movie. If you want to watch something heavy, I recommend it. Very good movie. The soundtrack to Waves is equally dark. Waves, digital only. Boom. But physical format, he released something very interesting that year. He and Atticus did the 3-part soundtrack to Watchmen. So Watchmen, the TV show, came out. They released 3 different physical vinyl of it. You can get the digital, but I remember that on the digital version of Volume 3, that included tracks that weren't on the vinyl of Volume 3, and that's because Trent said they weren't done. He said that the showrunners were like pushing them for more music and to change some things, and they weren't completely done mastering everything by the time the vinyl needed to get finished. So that came into 3 different versions, and they're all kind of interesting because they're related to the show. Again, if you want to do research and get really in depth on all of the detail that went into these 3 releases, the wealth of knowledge out there is impressive. So this one, which doesn't actually say Nine Inch Nails, it says Sons of Pale Horse, the Book of Rorschach. I can't say that word. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. So none of these 3 vinyl say Nine Inch Nails. None of them are listed as Nine Inch Nails. They're either like a band that was mentioned in the show, or they mention Nine Inch Nails and some other bands who were out at the time or whatever. But it's kind of interesting. So that's Volume 1. Volume 2 is this. An American Hero Story, Minutemen. I kept the plastic on because it had that sort of, it had some of that info on it that I wanted to keep. So the Watchmen soundtracks, I still haven't watched the show. I liked the book. I didn't really care for the movie. but I hear the show is good. This is volume 3. This, I would say, actually, to correct what I was saying, this is my favorite release. All 3 of these volumes are my favorite soundtrack work they've done. It feels a little bit looser. In a weird way, it feels a little bit more in line with what they were doing on like Ghosts or something like that, where there's I don't know, it's really good. The Watchmen volumes are excellent, so if you're looking to check those out, you can definitely get those digitally as well. So that's 2019. Then 2020, that's where we're at. Big year of quarantine. So he released just digitally 2 new volumes of Ghost, and of course I have them because they released them to everybody. If you want to get it, I believe it's still free on the website. You can get Ghost Volume 5. That was the cover. Ghost Volume 5 Together, the title of that. And just bring up Ghost Volume 6, which has a darker cover here. Gotcha, hang on. And so these 2 I really like. Locusts. Compared to the other 4 volumes of Ghost, which are on that 2-disc set from earlier, these 2 are, the tracks are much longer, and it also feels a little bit more in line with what they've been doing with soundtrack work since 2010. So 2008 was Ghost, and then after that, 2010 until now, it's tons of different soundtracks. This feels more in line with that. The tracks are really long. There's like a handful of songs that are 10 minutes plus. But I've really enjoyed listening to these 2 newer Ghosts. I think that's it. That's all my collection. I know that I missed a lot of stuff. I didn't get to go into detail on a lot more stuff that I would like to. I'm sure I messed stuff up. Please comment if you have any additional information for me or corrections. And just a quick happy birthday to Trent Reznor coming up here on May 17th, I think, which is just around the corner. So this wasn't planned to be near his birthday, but it kind of just worked out this way. So hope everybody's enjoying their quarantine. Enjoy this video. Happy to discuss anything with you on the video when we post it. And don't forget about the first person to comment on their 5 favorite albums gets digital download Bird Box. And check out that video link at Vimeo. Talk to you guys all soon.